Hello, everybody. Welcome to my channel. I'm going to do 9 signs you're dealing with a narcissist and why that's the wrong word to use on them. Yeah, I run into situations in my life every once in a while, and I ran into a situation today, and I think that's who this type of person I ran into is, a narcissist. But I'm not pointing fingers. It's just a situation that we all go through with certain people, either close by, close to us, could be a friend, could be a relative, could be someone at work. So I'm going to read some of this, or most of it, because I'm curious too. And pardon me if I can't pronounce some of the words precisely. But again, welcome to my channel, Ronald the Peculiar One, where I talk about the news, I talk about serious topics. I give you my take, my opinion, my view. You can take it or leave it. So don't point fingers at me if I'm off on something. I'm not. I'm a real person, so I might get something wrong every once in a while. It happens. All right, let's get going. I want to read the majority of this. Yeah, this was done in January 22nd, 2024. Health conditions and mental health. But I got to go through some of it. 9 signs you're dealing with a narcissist and why that's the wrong word to use. Narcissistic personality disorder is a mental health condition, not an insult. Pop psychology has turned looking for narcissists into a national pastime. A quick visit to your search engine, and that's what I did, of choice will reveal articles, after article on how to spot a narcissist as narcissists, as if they were rare, unique antiques or Pokemon. Once you've spotted a narcissist in your midst, the internet's bloated with tips of living with them, leaving them, and taking control away from them. Some of the searches that autofill a Google are downright disturbing. How to manipulate a narcissist. How to make a narcissist fear you. No thanks. For whatever reason, narcissism is top of mind right now. So we should probably know what the word actually means. We turned to clinic psychology. Fellow Brian Markley, PhD, to learn about the symptoms, or narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD. All right, let's keep going. And this is why calling people who fit the bill narcissist is a mistake. What is a narcissistic personality disorder? You can look this up. Looks like what I just read. That's all over the internet. The word narcissist gets thrown around a lot to describe folks who might exhibit signs of self-absorption or inflated ego. But narcissistic personality disorder, say that 10 times fast. NPD is a mental health condition that's diagnosed by professionals. Yeah, they get their money somehow. But some of this stuff they know what they're talking about to some degree, more than the average person. But then again, they can get full of themselves too. NPD is a cluster of B personality disorder alongside borderline, antisocial, and histrionic personality disorder. The common thread united these conditions tendencies that lead to inappropriate ways of thinking, feeling, and interacting with others. As is true for many mental health conditions, we see these tendencies starting to adolescence or early adulthood. Then they stay relatively stable over time and can lead to distress or impairment in function. And often a person living with narcissism or NPD will have no idea why they're struggling with the so-called basics of life. And telling them it's because they're a narcissist isn't helping. More on that later. 9 criteria of a narcissistic personality disorder. Just like other mental health conditions, you can only be diagnosed with NPD if you meet very specific criteria as determined by a trained mental health professional. Well, you can get close, I'll tell you that much. Just by how they make you feel. We use a set of criteria from the 5th edition of Diagnostic, and okay, you can read that part, we'll skip that. To be diagnosed with a personality disorder of any kind, an individual has to meet with a behavioral health specialist. Well, they're selling this. They want you to go right to those shrinks, don't they? And you know a narcissist type of person isn't going to go to those places. To be diagnosed with a personality disorder of any kind, an individual has to meet with a behavior. Okay, gotcha. According to the DSM-5, a person with NPD needs to demonstrate at least 5 of 9 qualities in a wide range of situations during an evaluation process. Like they're going to actually, like I said, like they're actually going to go to this place, get diagnosed. Really? That's not happening. Not unless it's a parent's taking a child, and the child has no choice but to go because they're kids. But as an adult, most people aren't going to do that are like this that they're describing here. A grandiose or dios sense of self-importance, fantasies about having or deserving, a sense of self-superiority, a need of excessive admiration, a sense of entitlement, exploitative behavior, a lack of empathy, frequent envy, arrogance. Well, any given day, if someone in a certain mood could do a few of these at a time. Maybe not all of them, but a few of them at a time, just by being upset or something. If you're hoping to identify NPD in a wild, understand these characteristics is your best bet. But as you quickly realize, there's a reason you need special qualifications to diagnose people. It's more complicated than just ticking a box. Some traits that are common in people with NPD, like Peter Pan syndrome, aren't on the list. Peter Pan syndrome. And sometimes the traits that are on the list present in unexpected ways, which is the case when somebody's a covert narcissist. So they look at you. I think covert narcissist, this is my opinion, I didn't click on it. Maybe that just means that in secret. So in other words, out around people, they want to get liked, so they pretend to be happy, but deep down they're angry, and maybe that's what that is, covert. Candido's sense of self-importance. We all know people who, despite having a list of accomplishments, as long as your arm, have managed to stay humble. That isn't the case for people with that, NPD, narcissist. They're often decline to brag about who they are, what they have, and the things they've done. So this is kind of right on the border, that type of stuff. The DSM-5 is quick to note that this sense of superiority doesn't have to be earned. In other words, a person with NPD might make up or exaggerate their achievements. They even expect to be regarded as special without doing anything, personally or professionally, to distinguish themselves. So in other words, let's say somebody says, "Oh, I have this and you do not." And so they'll look down at you like you're scum or something. Yeah. They single you out basically, and they stick their nose up at you. A lesser known quality of the NPD is holding oneself to unreasonably high standards. Dr. Markley says that happens in part because people with NPD tend to overestimate their abilities. In other words, a person with NPD often doesn't realize their goals are unrealistic because they think they're better than other people. Fantasies about having or deserving. To use the DSM-5's exact words, people with NPD often have a preoccupation with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. Most of us have probably daydreamed about being rich, famous, powerful, loved, or talented, but in the case of NPD, these flights of fancy are defense mechanisms. According to Dr. Markley, there are two sides of the NPD coin. The grandiose. Yeah, this word could be pronounced grandiose or grandiose side and vulnerable side. And one can't really exist without the other. Behind all the bravado people with NPD tend to have very low self-esteem. Yeah, that sounds about right. Fantasies of having and deserving act like a shield. Keeping their head in the clouds makes it easier to square the person they believe they are with the person they actually are. Like split personalities or something. A sense of self-superiority. From the time we're little, we all learn that each of us is unique, special in our own way. And it's true. But for people with NPD, that idea becomes a bit distorted. According to the DSM-5, people with NPD tend to believe that they are so unique and special that most people can't understand them. That impacts their personal and professional lives because they feel that only very distinguished people or institutions are worthy of associating with them. In other words, they're high status and only want to interact with people they consider to be their social equals or better. So in other words, like I ran into a situation off and on that they use their jobs for excuses. They use their finances for excuses that, oh, I have this and you do not. So you're beneath me, basically. So if you're in a situation where someone uses money, their job, or they single you out by comparing you that they have it and you don't. That's what this is. This is one of the factors that make them narcissist. They think they're better than you in some way, and they use it to belittle you, or they stick their nose up at you. And that's a few main signs that they're like that. Well, they're narcissist type of individual. In other words, they're full of themselves. A need for excessive admiration. While it may make us blush, most of us want or need the occasional compliment or recognition to feel valued. That's all of us, basically. Yeah, so that's correct with that. I understand that. For people with NPD, Dr. Markley clarifies that the need for positive reinforcement is much greater. While people with NPD might not show it, they often experience intense feelings of inadequacy, self-doubt, emptiness, and anxiety about how they're perceived. That anxiety motivates them to seek the approval and praise of others. As part of their effort to protect their self-image, they may fish for compliments, be hostile to constructive criticism, and engage in attention-seeking behaviors. So in other words, you could have start a conversation, and all of a sudden it's about them. It all gets centered around them. They totally forgot what the point of the conversation was about. They're basically talking. Basically, it's all zoomed back into them again. Look at me. It's about me. It's what I did for you. It's all about what I did for you, and not caring about the person they stomp on with their attitudes towards them. So let's continue. A sense of entitlement. There we go. Another common feature of NPD is a sense of entitlement. The DSM-5 describes entitled behavior as unreasonably expecting special treatment or compliance. It's sense that the rules don't apply. In other words, it's about them. They're the center. Everything's about them. If you do something that's not to their liking, they they stomp on you. Whether it be raising their voice at you, yelling at you, comparing what they have that you don't, and then they use that against you. The key word here is unreasonable. In other words, they're just being dirty towards you. There are certain circumstances where you can reasonably anticipate special treatment. It's reasonable to expect a DJ to play your favorite song at your birthday party, even if it's really unpopular. It's not reasonable to expect that stinker to ring out at the club or over the airwaves of your local radio station. The same goes for expecting compliance. It's fair to expect good customer service from the barista at your neighborhood coffee shop. You can't reasonably expect them to memorize your order or let you cut the other customers who are waiting in line. Okay. When a person has an entitlement mindset, they spend a lot of time feeling disappointed, wronged, and even angry. Yep, they're not happy. They're not happy. There's no joy. They pretend to have joy, but they're not happy with themselves at all. So they take it out on others. Dr. Markley says can take a big toll on a person's mental health. It's sort of like seeing the world through a funhouse mirror. Each unmet expectation or perceived slight is a new curve in the mirror, adding to their distorted understanding of themselves and the world they live in. Exploitative behavior. According to the DSM-5, it's common for people with NPD to take advantage of other people for selfish reasons. Sometimes they use people on purpose. But it can also be an unconscious thing that can be a really hard interpersonal tendency to manage, Dr. Markley notes. For example, many people with NPD are driven by a need for external validation. In other words, they want the world to evolve around them. They want to be the center of attention. They'll lie to join people's conversations because they feel left out, and so on. As a result, they might pursue friendships or relationships based on what a person can give them, like wealth or status, as opposed to who they are. They don't necessarily know that's how they're choosing their friends, but it's what happening. So in other words, again, like I said, they'll try to impress people, which makes them an annoying person. Like, say you're having a conversation with someone, and all of a sudden they stick their nose in your conversation, and they'll try to make some kind of a joke, but it becomes out of kind of an annoying. Just try to butt in, basically. And I've seen this all too clearly. I've had this happen to me. Actually, I had it happen to me today. But I've had it happen to me off and on all the time, and they don't even realize they're doing it, or they do. I think they're so sad inside, or they're so unhappy, and they think by buying the world off, trying to be part of it. Look at me, world. The world don't care about you. People don't care about someone being annoying, and not that they don't care. I mean, about the person. I'm just saying they don't want someone to come up and join in a conversation, and all it's doing is making it annoying. That person's sticking their nose in, and it's annoying, isn't it? Hey, look at me. Look what I can do. To try to because those two people, four people, a big group of people are laughing. Well, I got news. This is my personal opinion. Everybody feels left out, even if you're in a group of people, even if it's this one-on-one talking. Everybody feels partially left out, even in the conversation they're having. It's just there's a part of us that's empty, that's not there. But with a narcissist, they take it. They don't know how to cope with it, so it's like they're acting out, like a kid acting out, as I think that's what they call it, where yeah, you get what I'm saying. A lack of empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand how other people feel and share in those feelings. Many individuals with NPD struggle with active listening because they aren't naturally inclined to be interested in the people around them. Dr. Markley explains some either can't or won't recognize, understand, and respond appropriately to other people's emotions. Lacking empathy can cause a person with NPD to say and do things that are extremely hurtful. There you go, right there. I had that happen to me today. Without anticipating, or in some cases, caring about how their actions are affecting others. They may even see being upset or highly sensitive as a sign of weakness. Frequent envy. Everybody struggles with the green-eyed monster from time to time, especially in the case or in the age of social media. But for people with NPD, envy looms a bit larger. They spend a lot of time wanting what other people have because they believe they deserve more than everybody else. They may play down or belittle other people's successes. At the same time, people with NPD, I mean, being a narcissist disorder thing, often assume other people envy them and their successes, whether those successes are real or imagined. And Dr. Markley adds, they believe they should be envied. Look at me. I have this, you don't. So I'm better than you. That type of stuff. And I put up with that quite a bit lately. Off and on, actually, for quite a while. And other people out there, too. So they're everywhere. Even at jobs. Even at the dentist office. Even the dentist can be that way towards you. You ask the question multiple times and they won't answer. They answer it their way, or they think they're superior to you. Arrogance, the ninth and the final diagnostic criteria. The MSM-5 assigns to NPD is demonstrating arrogant and haughty behavior. Or haughty behaviors or attitudes. A person with NPD may act condescending, snobby, or even disdainful of the people around them. Yep, exactly. Dr. Markley says that is important to keep in mind, that the person who has NPD may not realize that they're making the people around them feel inferior. Yep, exactly. Narcissist. After all, the line between healthy self-confidence and arrogance can be difficult for anybody to tread. It's even tougher if your perception of yourself and the people around you is warped by a personality disorder. Why you shouldn't call people narcissists? There are two reasons why labeling somebody a narcissist is bad form. Unless you know they've been diagnosed with the condition, you're making a big assumption. Having narcissistic tendencies isn't the same thing as having the disorder, basically. The word narcissist stigmatizes people who actually have NPD. And the stigma around mental health is bad enough already. When you feel the urge to call somebody that, a narcissist, what are you really trying to say? Chances are it's not a compliment. The words become a kind of a cultural catch-all. Narcissists are bad people, the script goes, and you should avoid them. Because narcissistic personality disorder is part of that cluster B category of personality disorders. It's normal to experience difficulties in relationships with folks with this diagnosis. Dr. Markley concedes, but no one ever deserves to be demonized for their mental health struggles. People with NPD deserve compassion and empathy, even if they struggle to show it themselves because of their diagnosis. Dr. Markley reminds us that people living with NPD tend to be vulnerable to criticism because their self-esteem is already fragile. So let's lose the unnecessary shaming language and think seriously about navigating relationships with people who have narcissistic tendencies. Interacting with someone who has narcissistic tendencies. Okay, don't call people narcissists. Check. But what do you do if somebody in your life is behaving in a narcissistic way? The answer depends largely on you. If you're wondering if your partner, parent, sibling, coworker, or friend might have narcissistic personality disorder, my recommendation is to evaluate your role in the relationship with them. Dr. Markley says, how valuable is that relationship to you? Relationship, my microphone. And how much does their behavior impact you? You also have to think about whether or not they are aware that their behavior is harmful. Have been diagnosed with NPD by a qualified professional or seek treatment for their condition. See, that's just right there. Most people that are like this, narcissistic or whatever, you can't even talk to them. They ain't going to hear it. And they're not going to go do that because somebody says so. You should go get checked out at a professional. They're not going to go do that. That also costs money. People aren't going to do that. Most of these people, they're going to keep that attitude. They're going to think they're better than everybody. They're always going to bring up something they have that you don't to use against you. They're going to roll their eyes at you, stick their nose up at you. They're not going to listen and do this stuff. This is only if they're civilized, if this was a civilized world, that this would even work to go get professional help. Weighing all these factors will help you figure out how you want to engage. Maybe you need to limit the time you spend together or use techniques like gray rocking to minimize conflict. What is gray rocking? If you can't limit your engagement, say, because the person is questioned is your teenage child, knowledge is power. If you know someone has NPD, then maybe with some more empathy or knowledge on your end, it will be easier to navigate the relationship challenges and work toward healthier behavior. Yeah, I think this is where we're going into. This type of thing isn't really going to matter to that individual. Like I said, they're not going to listen to if they don't even listen to you anyway. All they're going to do is try to start fighting or arguing with you. They're always going to try and prove you're wrong, that you don't matter, and all that matters is them. You can't really interact with them, so you can avoid them as much as possible. Let's say if you're in the same household with them, you can limit your interaction with them. You can try not to talk to them very much, but that's going to be an awful environment. It's sort of like being abused, being verbally abused towards, it's a toxic environment, basically, is what it is. You see it all the time in couple relationships, friendships. If your friend's doing that, then they're not a friend. They're not really a friend. If you can't talk to them without them raising their voice at you, it's time to move on. It's time to walk away. Now, if they're your kids, your love is going to be multiplied because they're your kid compared to a roommate or something. But you get what I'm saying. It's awful in all situations because, what can you do? What can you do about it? If you're in a relationship and it's that way, it's time to go. Like if like you're whether you know a man and a woman relationship, and it's all that it's toxic environment, because that's what narcissist type stuff is. It's really awful environment, because it kind of goes from a verbal abuse to an attitude abuse to a physical abuse, being around people like that. And I mean, what do you do if you have to live with them? It's really, that's why I think there's a lot of domestic issues involved in type of people that just don't have any empathy towards you whatsoever. It's sort of like they're in a mood swing. Like if they're angry, well, you don't want to be around a person when they're angry. And let's say you're happy and they're hateful. Well, they just ruined your happiness. That little mood you had of feeling good, they just stomped on it. And it overpowers your happiness, because I'm just saying, it's basically abuse is what it is. It's kind of a form of abuse, not just a disorder. Maybe a disorder medically, but if you have to live with them, it goes from that to I'm always upset. I'm always not feeling good. It's time. If you can get away from it, my advice is to avoid them at all costs as much as possible. Don't even talk to them if you can help it. Because if you talk to them and they immediately go back to this narcissistic or hateful or abusive type stuff, that's not a life. That's not a household you want to live in. So yeah, see, gathering more information. See, but what if that effort is totally one-sided? This is what I just said. What do you do then? If the person in question meets the diagnostic criteria for narcissistic personality disorder and is unwilling to seek treatment or make changes, then they continue to cause a lot of distress. It's wise to proceed with caution and reevaluate the relationship. So however you know this person, whether it's a family member, a loved one, a relationship, like an intimate relationship, or just a friend or a coworker. It goes right here. It says, wise to proceed caution and reevaluate the relationship. It says, if you do choose to maintain a relationship, work with a therapist to think through how you might navigate the inevitable difficulties on your end. So, unless it's a family member, like it's like your kids or something, that you have no choice. You have to work. You have to figure it out. Of course, you're the parents, and if they're young enough and you can figure this out at a younger age, yeah, go get help. Go get help now if you can, because they're small enough for you to control the situation. Just don't be abusive or anything to get them there somehow. And but as far as like a roommate, a friendship, a relationship, as a intimacy with them, yeah, you got to get away from that. Got to get away from that, folks, because that's kind of abusive. It goes beyond just a disorder. It's very it become abusive, and who knows? It's very toxic. It says, what if you think you have this NPD? If you're concerned that you might have it yourself, your next step is to consult with a mental health specialist. Yeah, they have more money in their pockets. There's help out there, and there are treatment options. Just remember, to label other if it's not fair to label other people, it's also not fair to label yourself. And the fact that you're concerned about your behavior or interpersonal skills is a good sign. Being willing to seek out mental health care, that's an even better sign. And like I said, these types of people aren't just gonna do what you say, or even in this article. But it just like what it says up here. It's wise to proceed with caution and reevaluate the relationship you have with that person. Basically, Dr. Markley advises, well, I added that few words, but it's basically the same thing. If you do choose to maintain a relationship, work with the therapist. So, if you're not, like, if it's not your kids, and this is happening, say, a friend, or if this is happening as, say, a roommate, you got to get away from them. You got to get away from these types of people, and especially the ones that wouldn't listen to you. It's all about them anyway. And let the pieces fall as they may, basically. And there's a lot of this stuff going on, especially at work. Someone's always trying out. Do you make you think that your work has no worth whatsoever when you're busting your behind, doing just as good, maybe a little bit better at times, or maybe a little bit worse than them at times. Because each day you go into work, you could have a burst of energy. You could feel better that day, or that day you might be just dragging along, so you can be a little bit slower at what you're doing. But when you're working with people like thinking they're better and trying to, like, you're gonna have competition with them, you're not having a competition with them. You're just doing your job so you can make some money. And if you didn't need money, you wouldn't be putting up with it. And there's a lot of people who go to work and put up with people. They're better off not saying that much and avoiding them as much as possible, but to get along with them so that there's not this really bad vibe around them of between you two, like an awkward moment because you spoke up. But there are times where you need to defend yourself and not take it, which causes you to decide and reevaluate, is it really worth this job? Should I go find me a different one and start again? Am I going to let this person ruin my work, ruin this job that I'm working at? You get where I'm going with this. There's these fine lines that you're right on the edge of crossing when you're working with somebody that's awful. So, but you also have to stand your ground. You also have to defend yourself, that you will not let them stomp on you. And then it comes down to, is the job worth it? Can I get another job like this? Can I get another job that pays better? And then you got to decide, it's time to look for another job, or do you want to just keep dealing with it? That's up to you. You have to decide what's the worth of it. So, and it also depends on your situation. Like if you have kids to raise, well, you might just have to suck it up if that's the best job you can get. So that's why you have to avoid them, not talk to them as much. You can start out avoiding them, but here's the thing: if you're living around somebody that you have to constantly avoid, kind of hide from them, that's kind of like abuse. That's kind of like a very abusive type of environment. It's very toxic, I could say. Even if they're not physically abusing you, they are abusing you emotionally and verbally. So this is my take, my opinion, my view. I wanted to share this because I recently went through something like this, and I occasionally do go through something like this from here and there. And I just want you all to know that I'm a real person. So, but I wanted to share this because it's my way of expressing myself. All right, thank you so much. And again, this is just my take, my opinion, my view. You can take it or leave it. You don't have to listen to what I'm saying. It's just, if you watch this video, thank you. If you're subscribing, thank you. I appreciate it. And anyone who is under 1,000 subscribers, if you go to their channel on YouTube, please subscribe to their channel. Even if you don't want to push all the notifications of every video they put up, please consider at least subscribing and maybe watching one full video they have to help them out so their channel can grow. All right, moving on to the next video. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a very touchy subject, of course. I know that is clear as day. All right, you take care, everybody. And if you're in a situation like this, I hope this helped. Give you an open mind that you're not alone. You're not alone. All right, take care, everybody. Moving on to the next video.